If the United States is no longer the world's largest superpower, then two things happen almost immediately. First, being an American no longer has an advantage. Everything we talked about having $100 in your pocket as an EDC, or having an international credit card, which is most of the banking institutions are American banking institutions, all of that takes second place. Because now everybody's going to want an HSBC credit card. Now everybody's going to want to have a passport from China, right? If China becomes the world's global superpower, everybody wants to go with China. You and I have actually traveled the world, and we know you, being a Caucasian male, you know exactly what it's like to step into a place and have everybody want your attention. Mm-hmm. Because once they hear your American accent, they think to themselves, money, power, connections. I mean, it's amazing how much influence outside of the United States being an American gets you. I'm an ambiguously brown guy with big hair. As soon as I pull out that blue passport that says United States on it, I mean, parts of the world open up to us that we've taken for granted because we've never remembered. We've never experienced a life where that little blue passport doesn't get you special perks and attention, right? Everybody wants to be friends with an American because they think America is the land of opportunity. It's the land of freedom. Most countries in the world do not know freedom and do not know opportunity. So when they meet us, we're their ticket. That's how everybody in the world, that's how the vast majority of the world sees Americans. Okay. Their ticket to opportunity, their potential ticket to freedom. If we're no longer the top of the food chain, then we lose that appeal. Because now all of a sudden, you need to have a Chinese passport to have the ticket. You need to have a Chinese identity or a Chinese genetic background for people to take and pay attention to you, right? And that's going to be hard. That's going to be a big, drastic difference for the generation that is our children, because like they're going to know what it's like to have been 13, 14, 15 years old and American, but then be 23, 24, 25, young professionals starting their careers and be second-class citizens, essentially. Yeah. Right? So our plan is that if that's the direction that it goes, we're leaving the United States. There is no advantage to being an American inside the United States if you can basically rebuild your identity somewhere else.
Interesting.
So we would actually immigrate, most likely to Europe, because Europe will still be pro-US, right? If anything, Europe and the United States are going to be fighting a Chinese hegemony for probably the next 30 years. So go to Europe and essentially establish ourselves as dual-docked citizens. Spend 5 years in Portugal, 5 years in Spain, potentially get into Italy, spend 3 to 5 years building residency somewhere, working towards an EU citizenship, because then you'd become dual-docked EU and US. Whenever you're on the losing side of a battle, which nobody likes to talk about, but whenever you're on the losing side of a battle, sometimes the next best thing to do is to blend in and look like a non-threat. If you have a Spanish passport or a Portuguese passport, do you feel intimidated by Spain or Portugal? No. So neither will a Chinese. But people, if you're in second place, people feel intimidated by you. So if I had to pick how I was going to travel the world when my children are 25 and I'm in my 60s, I'd rather travel the world under an EU passport as a dual-docked citizen than travel under a US passport and potentially draw the attention and the ire of the world's superpower.
Interesting. I love that train of thought. I am surprised to hear you say Europe, considering it's, everything that's going on over there right now.
Oh, yeah.
I've thought about this too. My place, I believe, would be Paraguay.
Yes. So Latin America and the Bahamas too. Well, the Bahamas are part of Latin America. You're thinking on the exact same lines. The main difference, the main reason I wouldn't go south is because first world electricity, first world internet, first world medicine, even if it's on the decline, it'll take probably 2 generations before it fully declines in a first world country. Mm-hmm. So if you're in Italy, Spain, Germany, Poland, the UK, it's going to take 30 to 50 years before that infrastructure actually falls into such disarray because of a lack of economic stimulation. We're talking end times, right? If the world actually starts to decline because the new superpower basically imposes their will on the whole world, if that actually were to happen, it would take decades before those institutions degraded to a place where we would feel it in our everyday lives. But in a place like Paraguay, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Chile, that same degradation would probably happen in about 15 to 20 years. So now you or I might be a 75-year-old man living on a healthcare system in a country that's falling apart. If we're in Latin America. If we're in Europe, we're a 75 or 80-year-old man in a country that still has 25 years more ahead of it of a working healthcare system.
Interesting. The reason I like Paraguay is there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Their industry is farming cattle, to be specific. There's no tourism there. It's south of the drug trade, so you don't have to worry about all the cartel violence and everything. It's a lot of petty crime, petty theft, burglaries, getting, robbed on the street. But you're south of all the cartels, you're south of all the drug trade. You're just out there. Yeah. Nobody knows about it. You're very close to Argentina, which I believe is first world.
Yep.
And so that's kind of my thought process. But interesting. Europe.
Well, the idea, what we're both getting at is, again, embracing this idea of change. You have to have an evac plan. Like, to stay and fight is a possibility, but we won't really know what the likelihood is of a good fight until the time comes. So it's always wise to have that go bag. It's always wise to have that backup plan, right? Inshallah, in my hopes and my dreams, if China takes over as the world superpower, I hope I get a phone call from either the US military or the CIA or somebody that says, hey, we need to fix some stuff, and we would really appreciate being able to consult with you, bring you back on to get your thoughts, something. I would love to see us rally to try to come up with how do we get out of this mess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the government that I worked for, that's not usually how it works. Usually, whoever the incompetence is in charge, they just double down on their own incompetence. And then and they don't trust anybody who's former. Instead, they just try to hire new. And then you're like, you're leaving behind everybody who has accolades, everybody who has a history of solid, strong performance. You could be tapping into that library of talent to fix the next generation of solution, or the next generation of problems.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think we're going to get that phone call. So
I don't think we will either. I think, and nobody really knows what the fight is going to look like if it happens. I think the fight is very much happening right now.
Yep.
And I think everything that's happening right now, if this escalates, it's just going to be amplified, and it's going to look very similar. It's just going to be amplified.
I think that's a fantastic way of explaining it, right? The fight is already happening. And whatever happens in the future is essentially going to be an amplification of what we're seeing right now. I think that's a fantastic word to use, because what happens is people start becoming afraid that it's going to look like something else. Like they're afraid it's going to look like World War II. They're afraid it's going to look like nuclear weapons blowing up in major cities. That's war, and the idea of conflict evolves. The reason World War II looked nothing like World War I, and the reason World War I didn't look anything like revolutions before that, is because conflict grows just like people grow. Why would we expect World War III to look anything like World War II? It doesn't make any sense. And over the last 30 years in U.S. military history, and for sure in world military history, we've already seen the next evolution of conflict. And it looks like proxy and economic warfare. And guess what we're doing right now? Proxy war and economic warfare. Just like you said. All we'll see is an amplification of the current fighting style.